Good morning. Welcome to another edition of Duval Rundown. We've got lots to get to today. Voice of the Jaguars, Frank Frangie, along with us. Frank, always great to see you. Appreciate your time. We've got breaking news this morning. The Jaguars, they haven't announced this yet, but Ian Rappaport is reporting that Austin Johnson, a defensive tackle, has been signed to the roster. He played about 31% of the snaps in Buffalo last year. He's 31. The Jaguars are his fifth team, but he's got like 56 career starts, somewhere in that range. So this is somebody that's a veteran, played a lot of football. What does this tell you about the state of the defensive tackle situation?
Yeah, I think the word was, and good morning to you, Hayes. I think the word was the feeling around the building is they pretty much had built the roster to where they wanted it in most spots. That might be the one spot where they were still looking around a little bit. So I think I'm not super surprised. I didn't know if they would do a deal or who it would be with, but I thought there was probably some chatter around the building that there might be a move forthcoming at that spot. Look, I think only they know what they think about that. We'd have to ask Liam or James Cohen or James Gladstone rather, or Tony Baselli that question. But I would think common sense says that's the one area, Hayes, they weren't able to address as much as they would have liked to in the player procurement period. I mean, think about it. That if you look at all the free agent signings, and they were very active. If you look at the draft, then it looks like it was a very good draft. It's certainly starting to play out that way. I'll bet it will. The one area they weren't able to address was defensive tackle, interior defensive line. And I think they probably tried. I think they probably, you can't fix everything in one off season. And I think that's the one spot they weren't able to address. So I think they probably knew that. That in conjunction with, I don't know what the situation is with Eric Armstead. I think it's widely known by now he hasn't practiced very much. I don't know if that's just they're managing his reps or if there's an issue. I know there's a lower back thing. I don't know how significant that is. And Mason Smith is still not really as active as he'd like to be. So I think if you add all that up, they weren't able to do much in the offseason at that spot. Eric Armstead hasn't practiced. Mason Smith hasn't been able to practice. I think they probably said, let's get one more guy in here who's played some football. So I had no idea who it would be, but I'm not surprised that it's somebody.
Yeah, and again, it's always interesting when we have kind of a breaking transaction to talk about on Duval Rundown. But the big thing we want to get to today is recapping Friday's scrimmage, the mock game. I thought it was, an unbelievable night for a lot of different reasons. We spoke briefly after it, but what were your thoughts on what they got accomplished Friday night in front of the fans in the stadium?
Well, I've reworked my February vacation planning. I want to make sure I have time for the parade, Yeah. So, and those parades can go deep into the middle of February, as you know. Yes. I think Tom Brady threw the trophy boat to boat like on February 20th or something. Yeah. Joking aside, I saw a lot that I liked. It's only a scrimmage. You're playing your own team, so you can't get too caught up in it. But it didn't look clunky. I think the one thing that I really believe about this team is of all the pieces, and there's a lot of pieces on every team, boy, good luck covering those three receivers. I think the one thing that has jumped off the page for me, and I'm going to talk about it at length on our program this afternoon, is those three receivers. When you can line up Brian Thomas Jr., and De'Ami Brown, who looks like he's as good as we were told he was, and Travis Hunter in the same formation. Not many teams have three guys that can fly, Hayes. You have a super fast guy on the outside and a pretty fast guy on the other outside and a slot guy who's not super fast, but he can find kind of nooks and crannies in the defense. But you rarely have three burners and three athletic guys. And I think that's good. That could round into one of the best trios of receivers this team has ever had. They're never going to have, or unlikely to ever have, a better duo than Jimmy Smith and Keenan McCardell. But they were never able to get a third guy with that grouping. And even since then, or ever since then, they haven't been able to do a lot outside. So at the three wide receiver spots, I love that grouping. And I think Brenton Strange looks like he might be a pretty good fourth guy as the tight end. So when they go to that 11 personnel, one running back, one tight end, three receivers, they're going to be a good team offensively. I think that more than we can talk about other specifics of the scrimmage. But if you're asking me what jumped off the page right out of the gate, Hayes, it would be that. It really would.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, to your point, it was mostly there was ones versus ones at the end, and the offense, to their credit, got a touchdown on the with Brenton Strange scoring it. But a lot of the scrimmage was ones versus twos, and Liam Cohen, said that Anthony Campanile wasn't blitzing. They didn't want to show that, which makes tons of sense. So so obviously you're going against backups, and those backups are playing a defense that isn't going to be overly exotic. It's going to be very vanilla, but still, it was interesting. You could tell Liam Cohen was almost surprised at the success of the passing game. He even sort of said, we've been running the ball better these last 6 practices than really what we have been doing in terms of getting explosives through the air. But you're right. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. catches a couple of touchdowns. De'Ami Brown, Liam Cohen described as fearlessly coming over the middle with his ability to run. And then when Liam was asked about Travis Hunter, he was like, "Yeah, pretty cool, huh?" I mean, he's got amazing ability, and so you're absolutely right. If this team is got a superpower, it is those receivers. And Liam Cohen seems like he's doing a really good job of making sure that Trevor Lawrence is in a comfortable position. And I think it's paying dividends because Lawrence looks fantastic right now.
Yeah, Hayes, when I watch a scrimmage, and because we've watched so many of these over the years, it's not really about the results. Because like you said, you're playing against your own defense. Nobody's tackling to the ground. That also means nobody's hitting very hard, which means it's easier to go over the middle when you're not going to get hit, right? So it's not the results. It's not the how many points did you score or how many yards did you get, because you're going against your own defense with no blitzing and everybody knows everybody. So I don't get caught up in the results or with the stats or whatever. It's the eye test for me. Trevor looks better. To your point, the eye test. Again, forget all the scrimmage stats. The eye test of this, watching him Friday night, was different than the eye test of other scrimmages he's been in. The eye test of watching those 3 receivers, again, I keep going back to them. Hayes, and you and I probably had this talk, I really thought, because I'm a big dummy, I really thought when it was Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns, and Marquise Lee, they were all the same age. 2 had been in the same draft. 1 was signed in the same free agent period, that there was something special there. And that 17 team was really good, and they were going to be together for a long time. And I remember thinking, guys, hey, that's 3 pretty good guys that are going to grow together. Well, it never happened. They didn't have a great passing game. Beyond that, Allen Robinson wasn't very fast. Good player, but wasn't super fast. Allen Hurns wasn't super fast. Marquise had all the injury, that bad knee injury. But I remember thinking, looking back on that wasn't really special. It just felt special to us because we hadn't seen it very much. You know what I mean? And so it felt that way. This one's special. This grouping of 3 is really special. They found something in De'Ami Brown. Brian Thomas Jr. showed what he is last year. And boy, watching Travis Hunter is special. Let me add one thing to all that. Jeff Locke, we did a broadcast on Friday night. We kind of like a dress rehearsal, if you will. That Jeff and I did the broadcast just like we normally do it on our network. And we brought in Brian Sexton and JP Shadrick and John Ozier. We had some talk elements to it, but we did a 2-hour broadcast of the scrimmage, and we did a lot of play-by-play just to get into a rhythm of it. And Jeff made a comment that I agree with. He said, if it was me, I'd play Travis Hunter on offense. You can affect the game more on offense. The way the game is today, offense changes the game more than defense does. That doesn't mean don't use him at all on defense. You drafted him to do both. But I would lean toward more offense if I was the Jaguars. Who knows where that's going to land? Maybe he just plays every play on both sides. I don't know. But I sure would have number 12 on offense as much as I could.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that because if they're going to have a special season, it does feel like the identity of this team being special is the explosive nature of what they can do at receiver. And, and then you mix into your point, Brenton Strange, who looks good. You mix in a fantastic screen element. Liam Cohen has proven that he can orchestrate a brilliant, effective screen game, and they certainly have the running backs to accomplish that. So, yeah, there's certainly a lot to like. What did you make of the offensive line shuffling? We saw Anton Harrison playing some left tackle, right, which we haven't really seen much. Doesn't mean they haven't done it in previous years and closed practices. But at least with this staff, it's the first time that we have seen Anton Harrison working at left. Again, he could have done it in OTAs. We didn't see every OTA. But, Liam Cohen working through talking about with Van Lanen out, we need to figure out, who's the swing tackle, and we need to know guys that can play on both sides. I thought it was interesting because it wasn't just Anton Harrison that left. There were a multitude of, I thought, interesting offensive line decisions and where guys were. What do you make of where that unit is right now and kind of the process that they're going through of trying to find the best five?
Yeah, Hayes, the first point to your first question, I think they're experimenting. I think they wanted to see, okay, and I do think Cole Van Lanen, who's hurt with the shoulder, I think it is.
Shoulder, yeah.
But could be back by the start of the regular season, has every chance to be the swing tackle. I think there's a lot of conversation about that. But whether it's Cole Van Lanen or Fred Johnson, whoever your swing tackle is, if you've decided, okay, that swing tackle needs to be a right tackle. Okay, so when he's in the game, he's better at right tackle. That means if Anton Harrison's the starter that gets hurt, no problem. He's out. You put in the swing tackle at right tackle. What if Walker Little gets hurt? If you're convinced that the best lineup you then have is that swing tackle, either Van Lanen or Fred at right tackle, then you got to figure out what you're doing at left tackle. And I think that's what that was. I think that was, let's experiment in the event that Walker Little twists an ankle. What are we going to do? Well, we don't believe, and I don't know this, but I'm taking this from what I saw Friday night. We've now decided that if Walker Little twists an ankle, the second best left tackle on the football team is Anton Harrison. Let's go ahead and get him some reps there and get a swing tackle reps at right tackle. That's what I took out of it. I don't know that that's where they are, but that would be my guess from what we saw. As for the offensive line, that's the hardest group to really assess until they're playing football games. And in today's day and age, it's harder than ever because starters don't play a lot. The interesting thing to me is Patrick McCarry's not been out there. He's been nursing an injury. We all assumed he would be the right guard. Well, Chuma Edoga's gone in there, and he's been good. I think they would tell you he might be the biggest, most pleasant surprise of all of camp. Of all of camp, Edoga might be the biggest surprise. He looks more like a guard than a tackle. He's 6'4". He's not 6'7" like some of these guys are these days, like Walker Little is, or Fred Johnson. So he looks more like a guard to just looking at it, right? He looks 55. He's kind of an interior guy's number. He just looks the part of a guard, even though he's been a swing tackle in Dallas, and that was one of the conversations when he came here. He's been pretty good at right guard. They really like what they have seen so far. Now, again, I don't know how much you can tell till you're really playing, not just thudding. But so that's an interesting storyline. At the very least, that gives you an awful good sixth man, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think they feel that way. So, but yeah, it's hard to tell how good the line's going to be until they're really playing football. But I think to your main question, I think the shuffling was, okay, what happens if Anton goes down? We put our swing tackle. Today it's Fred Johnson with Van Lanen out, I assume, at right tackle. If Walker Little goes out, we don't put him at left tackle. We move Anton over there and still put him at right tackle. That's what I took from that.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too that was really interesting is just watching the engagement of the staff and players after the scrimmage. I stayed up in the press box and just had binoculars on everything that was going on, and this really stood out to me. Tony Baselli spent about 5 minutes with Ezra Cleveland, and they were having a fantastic conversation. I mean, so Ezra Cleveland and Tony Baselli are tight. Like, it was obvious that, Baselli, you wouldn't have the interaction that I witnessed them have. I mean, this wasn't just, hey, Tony walked past him, patted him on the shoulder and said, great job. They were engaged in about a 5-minute conversation where the EVP was smiling and laughing like the whole time. So, again, Ezra Cleveland looks like somebody, and you talked about this, I think, on Friday's show, that I've thought that was going to be Wyatt Milam, 85% chance that the rookie third rounder was going to beat out Ezra Cleveland. But it seems like Ezra Cleveland is taking something to heart because he looks to be in pretty good graces with the EVP, who's a tough grader when it comes to his offensive linemen.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't see that. And I don't know who Tony's closer to or not. My guess is Tony probably spends a lot of time with all those guys from time to time. We see some of it. We don't see others, but I hear you. But back to Ezra Cleveland, I'll tell you what, that's the beauty of competition, man. Here's the book on Ezra Cleveland, Fair or Not, that the previous staff loved him because he's so athletic. I mean, he runs like a tight end, man. He gets down the field, and the screen game is really good on his side because he can get down the field. But is he as physical as you might want? And that's been the book, and that might be totally unfair, but that was the narrative. Well, give Ezra, so let's go draft Wyatt Milam, who's a big physical guy, and maybe he beats out Ezra Cleveland. And I love the fact that Ezra said, well, maybe not so fast, okay? He came back in great shape. He's looked very physical in this camp. That's the beauty of competition. You don't know who's going to win the job. What you know is if you create real competition, not just word of mouth or not just lip service, I should say, real competition, then you may find a guy who plays above his expectations a little bit. So, yeah, I think that's a cool story. I think Ezra Cleveland saying, it's great we drafted this guy to West Virginia. I'm going to help him all I can. I'm going to be a good teammate. I want to help him grow and develop. But I'm not giving up my job if I can help it. And I think that's the beauty of competition. And I will say this. They brought in competition on that offensive front. We talked about Edoga. We talked about Fred Johnson. We talked about Makari. Robert Hainsey's the center. That's 4 veterans who weren't on the team. They played for other teams last year, and they brought them here. Then they drafted Wyatt Milam, a guy they like a lot. So that's 5 guys they brought in, Hayes, to compete with a lot. And they had a lot of returnees. Remember, they've got Walker Little back and Anton Harrison back and Ezra Cleveland back and Luke Fortner still on the team and Cole Van Lanen still on the team. So they had a bunch of guys already on the team, and then they brought in a bunch of newcomers. That's how you really create competition, and I think it's paying off.
We've got a few more minutes left on Duval Rundown, so I do want to, Frank, get your thoughts on the defense. Jordan Lewis with an unbelievable interception in the mock game. Jarian Jones, Liam Cohen singled out, is having a very good scrimmage. Tyler Lacey singled out by Anthony Campanile when he met with reporters yesterday after Sunday's practice, talking about Lacey doing well in the scrimmage. And Ventrell Miller had a nice pass breakup on a Trevor Lawrence pass to Travis Hunter near the goal line. So, what were your thoughts? And Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines-Allen, as they always do, very disruptive with their rush. What stood out about the defense to you?
Certainly the 2 or 3 plays you signaled out. The Jordan Lewis diving interception was a heck of a play. That was a read. That was a really good. I think he's going to be really good for them. The Ventrell Miller, when he stuck that left hand in and knocked the pass away, I think he's a guy that can really run. So the splash plays, Hazy, you're talking about, I think stood out for all of us. Nothing changed from what I believe about this defense. I think there's 5 or 6 spots I'm really confident. I think the 2 ends are really good. I think Foye Oluwakun's really good. I think Jordan Lewis, whether he plays outside in base, and I'm not sure how they're going to play that yet, and certainly nickel and nickel is very good. I think Eric Murray is not going to get beat over the top very often. That spot's where they're good. I think Tyson Campbell has grown. I think he's more physical. That's one thing you can see in practice. He isn't afraid to go man-to-man with Brian Thomas Jr., whoever, and physical them up. So both ends, Foye, Jordan Lewis, Eric Murray, Tyson Campbell. Guys, that's 6 guys of the 11 that I feel really good about. I really do. So now, if that Ventrell Miller, Devin Lloyd competition can be a good one, let a good player win there. If that Jarian Jones versus whoever else might be outside, remember now, they lost Monteric Brown for a while. If he can step up and be outside when Travis Hunter's not out there, that helps. They're trying everybody that other safety spot. We've seen Dewey out there. We've seen Antonio Johnson out there. We've seen Darnell Savage out there. Caleb Ransaw, before he got hurt, would have been in the mix there. So I feel good about half the defense. Does that make sense, Hayes? I feel good about half the defense, and I'm interested to see who wins the jobs at the other half. I'd be disingenuous if I didn't tell you I was worried about the tackle position, because I am. I'm worried about defensive tackle. I hope Devon Hamilton can refine it. I hope there's something left with Eric Armstead. I'm surprised he's not been out there more. I wouldn't expect, he's a veteran. I wouldn't expect him to play a whole lot in practice, but I'm surprised it hasn't been more than it's been. I hope Mason Smith can get back out there. So that's the position I'm concerned about. Intrigued with who wins the other linebacker spot opposite Foye Oluwakun. It's been Devin Lloyd. We saw in the scrimmage the other night. I'm interested in that. I'm interested in what they do at that outside corner. I think Jarian Jones is pretty good, man. Again, back to my thing at the top about Travis Hunter playing offense. I think Jarian Jones is good. I think if you got Jarian Jones and Tyson Campbell outside, and you have Jordan Lewis in the slot, I think you're pretty good there. That doesn't mean you're as good as you'd be if Travis Hunter was out there. I know that. But I like what Jarian Jones has done. I really do.
Let's set the scene kind of for what to anticipate this week. So they're off today, practice Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then obviously they've got the preseason opener Saturday against the Steelers. Anything you expect to see this week? Because I would imagine Tuesday and Wednesday are going to be incredibly physical days, and then Thursday is sort of your, hey, let's let the scrubs get some reps so we don't get embarrassed on Saturday, and these guys kind of know what they're doing. Let's make sure we're functional with our backups. But I would think tomorrow and Wednesday are big time physical practices if they want to have a physical camp.
I think your calendar's right. I think Friday the walkthroughs to get ready to is Nick Mullins going to play in the game? Is Johnny Wolford going to play in the game? Is Seth Hennigan going to play? Here's my guess. And by the way, I don't have any insight on this. It's just my opinion. I would guess, Hayes, you're not going to see many veteran starters much of the preseason. That doesn't mean they won't get a series or two here or there, and I could be wrong, but I would guess you're not going to see many of the key guys. I don't. That's just my opinion. Meaning that this week where you have competition, the offensive line spot. What about that running back room? I mean, between Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby and Bashil Tutin's now back on the field, and LaQuinn Allen is impressed since he got here. What's that gonna be? The other night is everybody that was in that scrimmage saw Tank Bigsby started the game. So when they started their first 11, it was ones versus twos. But when the game started, Tank Bigsby ran out there first. Now again, that doesn't mean he's going to run out there first all year long, but he ran out there first the other day. He's the downhill runner of the two. So I would think competition there. So I think you're right. I think you've got really camp kind of breaks after this week. It's still practice, but it's not the training camp feel to it. So I would think the last 2 or 3 days of training camp proper, you probably have a lot of physical battles at those spots you have to determine. Think about it for a second. How much real competition is there out there? You and I've had this talk, okay? There's not competition at quarterback. There's not competition. I'm talking about for starting jobs.
Yeah.
There might be competition for who's the fifth receiver or whatnot. But I mean, for key roles, there's no competition at quarterback. There's no competition at those 3 receiver spots. There's no competition at tight end. There's no competition at either defensive end or middle linebacker or one of the safety spots or one of the cornerback spots or the nickel spot. So the other spots are where there's competition, right? So that's where I would think you'll see is physical. Between Ventrell Miller and Devin Lloyd and Jack Kaiser, by the way, boy, he continues to flash, doesn't he? Mm-hmm. I think competition there. The running back spots, who is going to be the starter? And if you're locked into Bigsby and Etienne, who's the third guy? Is it LaQuinn Allen because he's a receiver? Is it Bashil Tutin because he's got that big upside to do everything? That's where I think you're going to see Kaiser. It's going to be a fun week because those spots, at some point, you have to start deciding who's where in those spots. And the other thing I'll throw in there is what happens with the guys who haven't been able to work very much yet. Is Caleb Renshaw going to be able to come back, or is he down for a while? Is Makari and Eric Armstead, are they going to be able to come back some a little? I think those are big questions too, and I think we'll start learning a little bit more this week.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Great stuff, Frank. Thank you so much, and I'll look forward to seeing you later on this afternoon.
Yeah, join again. We got a plan for the parade, Hayes.
So that's right.
Back up your. I know you guys, you and your lovely wife Jean, love to go to the Bahamas and Europe and Australia and everywhere. Back up the week. We'll
be in town for the parade. We'll be ready.
Thanks, Hayes.
All right. Thank you guys so much. We'll be back. Duval Rundown this Friday. That'll be Rick Ballou, but Jags are on the field Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so we'll be out at practice. We'll be back Friday. Thanks for watching Duval Rundown.